Hi, and welcome to the show. Rate and review the show at kevinmd.com/rate. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today's show, we have Nkem Asianua. She is a physician assistant student, and she co-wrote the Kevin MD article, What Does It Truly Mean to Be an Ally? Nkem, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So we get into your article in a little bit. First off, briefly share your story and journey to where you are today.
So I'm living in Salt Lake City. I'm a second year PA student in my clinical year doing women's health right now. It's going great. It's hard, but I love it. I'm happy to be doing something that makes me feel fulfilled.
Excellent. And so let's talk about the events leading up to you writing this article. You co-wrote it. It's
hmm
titled, What Does It Truly Mean to Be an Ally? So before getting to the article itself, what were the events
hmm
that kind of led up to you co-writing it?
Sure. So during my first year in PA school, I was a co-president of an organization called PAST, stands for Physician Assistant Students Supporting Diversity and Equity. And so we just try to put on different events and have different conversations and discussions about how to bring about equitable change in the classroom and in the community. And so one time we had a discussion in class, and everyone was told to raise their hand if they feel like they're an ally towards this group and that group and this group. And I noticed a lot of people raised their hand for like everything. And it just kind of made me wonder, like, do you know what it means to be an ally, or are you just kind of like aware that, hey, this thing is bad and I don't agree with that, but I don't necessarily want to stick my neck out for this situation either, and that's okay, but when I think about what I need from an ally, I wanted to like talk about those things. And so we came up with the idea to write this article and just kind of give some tips from just me. I'm just, one person, it's my opinion, and just have a conversation about what it means to be an ally for me, and then have other people talk about what it means for them as well.
Sure. So before going into what it truly mean to be an ally, so why is having an ally, why is that important to you?
I think that when you're going through different things in life, struggles, discrimination, oppression, it's nice to feel like someone agrees that, hey, that's not okay. And I want to speak up for you. Say that, like, I stand with you, and like hopefully together we can get through this. And that makes you feel better. It makes you not feel so alone.
So let's talk about the article itself.
Mhm.
What does it mean to be an ally?
To be an ally, it's definitely a little bit difficult. It takes energy, it takes wanting to do that. But being a listener, not making assumptions about someone else's journey, just saying, hey, I want to hear you out. I want to hear your experience. How can I be a support to you, whether you're there or you're not there, And how can I improve on this? What are ways that I can go about being a better ally? And also learning, like, it's okay to step back and say, like, I don't know if I can be an ally for you on this, but I can also just say, hey, I understand that's not okay, and maybe in sometime down the line I could be a better ally to you. So maybe when I get to that point, here's some information about how I could be that person in the future. It's okay to not be that now or ever, but just to have the knowledge and say, like, hey, that's a resource that I can use.
So you said that being an ally sometimes takes a little bit of energy. It takes more than
Yes.
just raising up your hand in some type of
Yes.
meeting or so. So give us a scenario, story, or case study about some of that energy that it takes.
Well, let's say that you're just walking down the street and you're just drinking your cappuccino, and you see that a black man is walking his dog and minding his business, and then someone comes out of the blue and starts harassing them and making them feel very uncomfortable and causing a scene when they're just trying to go about their day. It does take energy to and courage to step up and say, hey, to someone else, and assert yourself and say, hey, that's not okay. Why are you doing this to this person? And engaging in conversations with people. It doesn't have to be, violent or angry. It's just stepping in and just being a sounding board and saying, hey, what's going on here? And that does take energy. You might have just wanted to keep walking down the street and enjoying your day, but you saw something was wrong and going on, and you felt like, hey, that doesn't sit well with me. So I'm going to speak up today.
Are there misconceptions that you can share with us about being an ally?
I think one of the misconceptions is that, like, if you stand up for someone, you're being like closed minded or something, like, or that you don't care about anybody else. You can be an ally for different things, and I think that, and that's why I think it's important to have conversations and be calm and speak your voice so that people don't jump to conclusions that because I stood up for this person, I don't care about anybody else or nothing else really matters. It's like you can stand up for people all over and whatever their backgrounds or religions or titles are, like it's okay to speak up on more than one thing. I think that's a misconception that people have.
Sometimes allies may not have your lived experience. What are some things that they should not do in order to become a better ally?
So one thing I actually talked about in the article was like, for example, like LGBTQ month. We don't really need like rainbow colored buns, right? Like we need to have conversations like, so how do you feel? Start with that. How do you feel? How does this make you feel? And that statement can really go a long way because I realize that not a lot of people ask people, how are you doing with that? Like, how is this, how's your spirit? Like, how is your mood? Like, how are you dealing with this? What can I do? Even if it's not something large, should I go to this meeting? Should I listen to this podcast? It doesn't have to be anything big, just to have that awareness for yourself and just let others know that you're there.
Now, if someone comes up to you and they're a wonderful ally, how does that make you feel?
Like, wow, thank you. Just thank you. Because sometimes things happen in my life or other people's life, and it just feels like, man, this really sucks right now. I don't have any other way to put it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And when someone comes up and just listens to what I'm saying and they don't try to downplay my suffering, it makes me feel like I'm not alone in this and that people do care. And I do appreciate that.
So you mentioned earlier in this interview that this article came across from this group that you mentioned about. It's called PAST, the University of
Hmm.
Utah Physician Assistant Students Supporting Equity and Diversity Group. What are some
Yes.
of the other issues that you discuss in those meetings?
So we talk about like religion and how that can affect people's decisions, or even in the medical field, like learning about how different religions may not go about things the way that like we or I would go about something, or something. What was a hot topic was, of course, the Roe v. Wade overturning, just talking about women's rights and their bodies and stuff like that, gender identity, and just different cultures, and having like the competence and the awareness to understand like the differences between different cultures and how you go about being open-minded to that. And a lot of the stuff that we do is just like having conversations, or like if I have a student who's like, hey, in my culture, we do this, I want to celebrate this. Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about it. So it's not just about race all the time. We got to cover all the things.
So you're a healthcare professional in training, and from your
Hmm.
perspective, in your ideal world, how much further do we have to go?
We have a long way. And that's why I think having these conversations is important, because it's not something that we want to just brush under the rug. I think every day you can learn something new. And I think it starts with just immersing yourself in these different situations and allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable. It's okay. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. But I definitely think that there's a way to go, but it's slowly getting there. And I think as long as we have different groups being represented in medicine, we'll get there eventually.
So tell us what kind of resources you could recommend if someone wanted to become a better ally.
I would start by just typing in a Google search if you want to learn about, let's say, women's rights or gendered rights. Just type in a Google search and see what you find. And I know that sounds really vague, but that's kind of what I did too, because I was like, I don't really know one website to or one resource to tell people. You can kind of just go down a rabbit hole. But I think that feeling in the space to want to do the research will take you to where you need to go.
And my final question, what are some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the KevinMD audience?
Just be an active listener. Try to be open-minded when you can, and give yourself and others grace. And I think that'll really take people far.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and insight. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.